Hello, family. Welcome to JFK Today, your direct link to all things politics, comedy, and culture. I am your host, Janaya Future Khan, champ yapper and frequent nuisance in the comedy and activist world. Let's get dialed in. All right, well, today's overview, bisexuals. We're talking about abortion bans, giving you an elections update, and obviously touching base on the Middle East. So today is Bisexual Visibility Day. You might not have noticed because for bisexuals, that is every day. Every day is Bisexual Visibility Day. You know, I gotta tell you, I think I do the whole comedy thing, and there's a lot of jokes on bisexuals that are just happening all the time. And I think it's because they have this unique position like other people who sit in this weird space where they're hated but not oppressed in the ways that they want. Like what you experience is homophobia. The other stuff where people are like, why can't you just choose, is just like people being haters. And it's uncomfortable, but it's not oppression. It's not something that you can sort of like quantify or qualify other than this made me upset or uncomfortable. The majority of the time is homophobia, but it's just so funny because I realize bisexuals are to queers what queers are to straight people. Like, you didn't ask, but we're gonna tell you. Like, you're gonna know by the end of the conversation what I am. You know? And in the same vein, bisexuals are like the vegans of queers because they're anemic and persecuted, and proudly both. That's the bisexuals. That's what they are. Many bisexuals are averse to eating meat. Oop! Didn't want to bring that up. No, I'm joking. It is funny though, because the running joke for bisexuals, of course, is that a lot of people who identify as bisexuals end up in straight relationships. And there's at least 3 of you that's like, what? It's not a straight relationship if I'm bisexual. Okay. How you identify isn't how you're read, you guys. Remember. But for all like the dudes who are now identifying as bisexuals, and I'm all here for it, I need a punch card though. I'm gonna need a punch card. Like, I need to know that you're gobbling a dick every 6 months just to keep on your toes, just to like shake things up a little bit. Like, I'm not all this talk about like what is that, queer baiting? I think that's bullshit. You know, it's supposed to be fun and interesting, but go ahead, gobble a dick. You know, go down on a girl. You know, once or twice a year. You know, that's all. That's all I'm asking. That's it. I saw somebody post about bi representation. They're just like, there's not enough bi representation. And I'm like, is this the issue? Is this the issue that we need to be focusing our efforts on right now? Is it? Anyway, I got to tell you, I actually fuck with bisexuals because I found out that out of the entire LGBTQIA++, the yada, 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 two-spirit, whatever, population, they represent the most of us. Like, trans people make up 1% of the population, really less than, in the States. Gays and lesbians make up 3% of the population. Bisexuals make up 4%. So in terms of the war that's coming, I want to be with the bisexuals. I think we should unite under the bisexual banner of, it's not about who I sleep with, you guys. My favorite post, though, was somebody saying, you know, they named the 4 things about being a bisexual, and then someone's like, hey, the 5th is that you are attracted to men and women and you sleep with them. And the original poster was like, that's not what that means. That's not important. And I'm like, I think it is. Like, I think it's a little bit important. We went from like not reducing identity to like, or whoever, just who you sleep with. But I'm like, but it still kind of counts. Like, it still kind of counts. Anyway. Why don't we move on to elections? Here for bisexual. You know what, though? I will say bisexual lighting has changed my life. Truly. The best lighting. Lamps, y'all. Lamps. No overheads. That's bisexual lighting. They got it down. All right. I got some news that's very annoying. To me, to you, and to every bisexual out there, Trump is pulling ahead of Kamala in 3 key states. 3 key swing states. I practice saying that because it's actually harder to say than it sounds. Arizona, Georgia, and North Carolina, I'm really upset about it. So this is the thing that gets me. Voters across the Sun Belt believe that Trump's policies would help people like them while Kamala's policies would hurt people like them. And I'm like, what? Kamala's policies would hurt regular, everyday people, but the billionaire who hates everybody and everything and who lies pathologically and is going to dismantle the very system that, I mean, look, I called for dismantling the system, y'all. I was there. I was that guy, but not by the hands of fascism. Can we get serious about this? This is wild. Like, it is amazing to me that there's anybody in this country that could look at the status quo with the wealth disparity being as far as it is and look at a billionaire and say, he's got my best interest at heart, for sure. I most definitely identify with him more than I do with Kamala Harris. And like, look, I don't identify with Kamala Harris. It has nothing. This goes so far beyond race. But I think the hard part is that a lot of white people in this country can't look beyond race. That they may have been more swayed. I mean, I'm reminded of the fact that Biden won Georgia. Is Kamala going to? We have yet to see. Thank God that there's all these black people out there doing that. Just living out there and changing that vote up. We've seen there's been major shifts, but I am very, very keen on following this because I'm just like, Kamala's policies would hurt people like them. Like who? This is wild. Anyway, Georgia, Arizona, North Carolina. These are 3 of the 7 battleground states, right? And both Trump and Harris have been like all up in those places since Labor Day. I will say that Kamala has shown pretty good strength in several key states across the Midwest, but I got to tell you, she's got to get some movement on those Sunbelt states if we're going to win. She actually has to get some movement in it. Arizona, which Biden won, and he just barely won it by 10,000 votes in 2020, is probably the one where she stands the greatest chance of winning, but it's also one of her greatest hills to climb. Trump is ahead. He's 50% to her 45%. And again, you know, I'm not a huge believer in polls, but they are good indicators for where some people are at. I think we're so past the point where, you know, people are going to change their minds about who they're voting for. But for those people who have not yet made up their minds, or most importantly, organizing the people who would but don't necessarily have the motivation to vote. That's why that door knocking is so important, and you're seeing a lot of local organizers doing that number. I'm not going to doing that work. Rather, I'm not going to like bog us down with so many numbers. So I was looking at my notes, and I'm like, wow, I have so many numbers. But I will say that when there's a split ticket, which means, you know, they're both vying for this thing, Trump is edging her out, which is not a combination of words I wanted to say in relationship to Trump and Kamala Harris for lots of different reasons. Anyway, in North Carolina, right? So Trump won North Carolina in 2020 with just under 75,000 votes, I believe, something like that. You know, right now he has a slim lead over Kamala Harris there. So he's drawing in 49% and she's drawing in at 47. Look, we've got some days ahead, but there's only so many Tuesdays. I want to see some major wins. I just feel like if Kamala Harris could come out and actually sit firmly in a leftist, more socially democratic position, she would get more people out to vote, especially the dogged leftists who are like, yo, I can't vote for this person. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more because there's some people where I understand it. The questions are clear, but the rationale is deeply, deeply flawed. Anyway, here's what else the polls indicated. There were voters in the Sun Belt, so in that part of the country, they were worried about their own future and the future of the nation. And they suggested that Donald Trump's really dark campaign rhetoric, so this is this sort of story, our country is being lost, we're a failing nation. When he says that, it actually resonates with people. And that harkens back to that weird enlarged amygdala thing that keeps coming up around, oh, we found out conservatives have an enlarged amygdala, which means that the fear part in their brain, that's an easy way for me to say it, but it's, you know, it's a part of your brain that processes information, but also fear. In conservatives, this is a scientific fact, they have found in studies that they have people who tend to be conservative, also bigoted, have a larger amygdala than people who don't. And I'm like, where's the drug to fix it? Like, don't tell me the problem without the solution. I'm like, cool. Is this supposed to incite empathy? By the way, I'm very pro science, and I'm glad to know this. I just want to fix it. I'm like, what's the fix? Put it in the water. Put it in the water. That's a conspiracy I can get behind. Shrink the amygdalas. I'm tired of this shit. And I think if we look across the board, if we take that study, you'll see that we're just surrounded by doofus enlarged amygdalas just running around in human forms. Not interested in that. I'm like, see, Darwin, you was talking some shit, nigga. Like, what's going on? Anyway. our country is being lost and we're a failing nation, and that is the story. The thing that I don't care for is the fact that many people on the left are also choosing to picking up on these very nihilistic turns of phrase and frameworks, and it's very not in line with what black feminism and what intersectional feminism and actually what having a belief system is. These are like, nihilism happens when we are fighting a belief system and we don't have one in place. And this is the key. This is the key. I'm going to come back to that when we talk about the abortion ban. So I'm going to put a pin on this. We're coming back to it because I have a hammer and I'm ready to slam it down. I don't know. That was pretty gay, what I just said. Anyway, a really quick update because this is very important. Israel and Hezbollah, since my last recording, at least 492 people were killed in Lebanon, thanks to Israel. Lebanese officials say that this is the deadliest day since Hezbollah and Israel intensified their fight nearly a year ago, and more than 1,000 other people were injured, according to Lebanon's health ministry. You know, and of that, and this is, I think, this is a low ball of the number because they're still getting in information, but they say that 35 of those people killed were children and 58 were women, and 2 were medics among the dead. They're still gathering that information. I can't quantify or qualify, I don't even know the word right now, what an extreme escalation this is by Israel. Like, it is unbelievable. You know, you'll read in the news this very passive language, like Hezbollah let out X amount of rockets. Hezbollah shot X amount of rockets at Israel. The impact of these things is so minimal versus the extreme efforts Israel makes against any Arab or Muslim person. Again, I am not a fucking fan of Hezbollah. I really am not. I really have something against any kind of extremism, but this is the thing. Extremism begets extremism. A lot of the U.S.'s foreign policy and historical foreign policy has created the breeding grounds for extremism. And its relationship to Israel has only exacerbated that. If 9/11 isn't an example of that, I couldn't possibly tell you what is. It's the same fight that we've been having over and over and over again. Israel said it struck 1,300 targets in Lebanon, and is carrying out what an Israeli military spokesman, right, and this is according to the Washington Post, called an extensive, precise strikes. So how is it that so many other people are getting murdered, right? Benjamin Netanyahu, the absolute worst of the worst, on Sunday vowed that Israel's military would take, quote, whatever action is necessary to eliminate the threat across Israel's northern border with Lebanon. And he said that on Monday, that Israel does not wait for the threat, we take action before it. Yeah, we know. We fucking know. It is, I mean, you want to talk about enlarged amygdalas. This is insane. Like, there's no end in sight for this. And I really am a little bit disgusted with how the media is covering this. There is one player here that is honestly supercharging and just infusing this fight with steroids. I was actually about to say it was Israel, but I'm like, is it us? Is it America with these weapons and tools of destruction? I mean, I don't know that. I don't know how many folks here knew about the pager thing, but in terms of the White House, but I'm starting to there's no end in sight, and regular everyday people are just being used as collateral. And that we're seeing that true with superpowers everywhere in the world. I'll say this, Saudi Arabia put out a statement and said that all parties, they implored all parties to exercise maximum restraint and keep the region and its people away from dangers of war. And it's calling on the international community to end conflicts in the region. When Saudi Arabia is like, whoa, you guys, whoa. It's Saudi Arabia is like, this is too much. This is too much. The assassination state, this is too much. I am paying close attention to the UN General Assembly. So the United Nations is convening for its annual Assembly of World Leaders this week. the UN has thus far had to be honest, I mean, we say we have to solve the problem of the Middle East. I'm like, get the United States out of there. Stop giving Israel billions and billions of dollars. Maybe we start there and see what happens when we leave the Arab world to itself, and let them rebuild. And maybe they can keep their resources there without Britain and America and other foreign entities coming in and taking it. We could give that a go and see how that goes. Maybe we can infuse our world with some solar power and some wind energy and, all the other things that all the experts say would save us. Anyway, I'll be following it closely because I do think the temperature and the ways in which things are escalating beyond repair. I mean, absolutely beyond repair. I'm watching very close to see what happens there. Anyway, I wanted to talk to you about something very important because it kind of gets swept under the rug. It kind of gets... when we hear women's issues, women's rights, something happens and our brain kind of shuts down a little bit because misogyny, because the world actually hates women. And then we tried all these other ways to talk about women's rights, and then we started calling it abortion rights. And, I think it can be really hard to measure the impact of these bans. And there is an impact. So I've been following closely now, and finally... it's to give you an example of how challenging it is to get people really energized around abortion bans. And I will say a larger following of women are voting Democrat largely because of the abortion ban. But you got to ask yourself, if more than 70% of the population is pro-abortion, how do we keep ending up here? And it has a lot to do with the fact that how we talk about it, how our media talks about it, how the media seeks out these kinds of sensationalist stories and doesn't tell you the stories and doesn't tell me and you and us the stories we need to know is a huge part of the problem. That, to me, is one of the goods of social media. I'm going to tell you two stories here after a little bit of backdrops, and they come from 2022, and it is amazing to me. So Kamala Harris is talking about one of these stories quite a bit, and it's amazing to me that even with all the research I do, and all the time I spend online trying to find information, these were hard stories to locate. Thank you, ProPublica, for your work on that. So anyway, I'm going to say this because, we're gathering this information. It's like, what is it? So in Texas, right? This is from 2019 to 2022, right? So this is post these abortion bans coming out. Exclusive analysis, right, finds, and this is from NBC. Exclusive analysis finds that the rate of maternal deaths in Texas increased 56% from 2019 to 2022, compared with just 11% nationwide during the same period. So, in Georgia, right, ProPublica reported on at least 2 women who died after being unable to get either a legal abortion or timely medical care. Right, so official state committees are examining and examined these pregnancy-related deaths and concluded that both were preventable. Both of these women were black women, right? So a recent Associated Press review of federal investigations, right? So Associated Press, the news, right? They reviewed all these federal investigations and found that more than 100 pregnant women in medical distress who sought help from emergency rooms were turned away or treated negligently since 2022, right? That's when the Supreme Court overturned Roe v. Wade. So last year, a federal investigation found that hospitals in Missouri and Kansas involved in the care of a patient, Lisa Farmer, violated that law, right? I'm going to tell you about 2 stories that are right now very much in the news. One is Amber Nicole Thurman. So Thurman was rushed to the hospital on August 18th, 2022, right? She needed immediate care. She was pregnant, and a few days earlier, she had taken abortion medication to end her pregnancy, but was facing a rare complication. Some of the tissue remained inside her body causing a grave infection, right? So to clear the infected tissue, she needed a dilation, and this is a medical word I don't know how to pronounce, curettage, or a DNC. That's basically when they go into the cervix and essentially they scrape it up so that those infections don't happen. It's an emergency procedure, and it's used to empty the uterus for both abortions and routine miscarriage care, right? So medically speaking, Amber Thurman's pregnancy was already ended, but the state's abortion bans, that's Georgia, criminalized performing a DNC and threatened doctors with up to 10 years in prison if prosecutors decided they violated that law. So records obtained by ProPublica show that the doctors discussed the procedure. So imagine this. You have Amber Thurman. She's in pain. She's needing help. The doctors are talking about it. They're monitoring her. They go back and forth. They knew, right? The experts they watched her condition deteriorate over 20 hours. Experts on that state maternal mortality review committee, so there's a committee that monitors these things, they agreed that there was a good chance that Thurman would have survived if the DNC was provided sooner. So why didn't they save her life? Right? She waited there for 20 hours. Why didn't they save her life? Because they were afraid of being prosecuted. That's it. That's it. And it would be easy to say, what's wrong with these doctors? What's wrong with these nurses? How could they? But the thing is, these laws are designed to be, they're subject to interpretation. They're not based on science. They're based on theocracy. So doctors and nurses and medical experts are at the mercy of whatever prosecutor or government, governor, local state officials, however they decide to interpret that law, and namely the state prosecutors, of course, because they're the ones who are decriminalizing you and indicting you. They're subject to the mercy of that interpretation. They're specifically designed to be written that way. Experts call these laws confusing and not rooted in science. So all of these doctors are scared. And this is not anecdotal, right? Like ProPublica has done now dozens of interviews. They've got an abundance of research on their website that talk about how doctors are explicitly saying the laws have changed the dynamics of how they interact with their patients. They are literally scared of pregnant women. They don't want to deal with pregnant women. That's the condition that this has created. And so we talk about abortion bans and how horrible they are. We talk about abortion rights and how important they are. And I think we lose sight of like the people in that and who gets most impacted. I'm going to tell you another story. Candy Miller, also in Georgia, also a black woman. She was a 41-year-old mother of 3, right? She had a lot of medical complications. This is a thing that the law doesn't care about, right? The way that these laws are written and interpreted, they don't care about pre-existing conditions. Candy Miller had many, right? She had diabetes, she had lupus, she had hypertension, and her doctors told her that it would be dangerous for her to go through another pregnancy, right? And that it may threaten her life. The abortion exceptions, right? You know, those like, oh, well, you can have an abortion, but only if it's through rape or incest. First of all, fuck you. But anyway, that's how low the bar is set in a lot of places in America. So abortions, right? These abortion exceptions do not have any kind of exception that addresses the situation of pre-existing conditions like that. They're really limited to emergencies, right? Not situations where a patient's condition may become an emergency later on because of what she's going through, because of what she has. So because abortions were outlawed, her family says that Candy Miller ordered pills online from overseas and took them at home, right? The pills, and as you know, if you know anything about, abortion pills, they can cause complications. And patients should go to the hospital if that happens. They should be free to go to the hospitals when that happens. They should feel welcome, safe, encouraged, right? In Candy Miller's case, the abortion didn't complete. That's according to an autopsy, and her family's understanding was that abortion was outlawed and people could go to jail for having an abortion. She was so afraid, and so was her family, that she did this at home. I'm going to say, like, this last piece gets me. From the standpoint of Georgia law, right, it's not clear, right? Courts have ruled that women cannot be prosecuted for their own abortion, but there's been a lot of confusion around this. And Candy was found with other medicines in her system. I got to tell you, like, the more I read about this, the more I really hate people like Brian Kemp and the Republican lawmakers that pushed this through and that were overjoyed at the abortion ban, and they celebrated. So when ProPublica reached out to Kemp's office to explicitly tell them about these cases, they said that that kind of reporting was fear-mongering. That's what they called it. This is what I'm going to say about this. This is why I get so fucking stressed out. So stressed out by how we talk about voting in this election time, right? I think about Candy. I think about Amber. I think about Melissa, and the people who actually get impacted by this. The two stories I spent time and told you about were two black women. It really stresses me out, this false moral equivalence that voting for a Democrat is somehow supporting genocide. You want to know something? The only way to impact the reality of genocide in any meaningful way is to build power. That's it. And it amazes me how casually we can talk about gambling with real human lives so that you can make a point, right? And I understand, like, that there's a genocide, but I'm like, I'm not willing to be a sideline person when a genocide is happening. I'm simply not willing to do that. I'm going to find every way that I possibly can to impact some kind of change while a genocide is happening. And I'm not going to play with the lives of black women here, Muslim women here, Muslim people, black people, trans people to make a fucking point. I'm going to fight tooth and nail with every single thing that I'm given that's in front of me. Every single right that we have, from voting to civil rights across the board, desegregation, women's rights, whatever you look at, the rights and protections of LGBTQ people, the Democrats didn't give that to us. They've never been the party of choice. We fought for that and we won. That's it. We built power and we won. That's how we have those things. Now you want to put those things on the chopping block to make a point because you think that somehow voting for the Democrats is an endorsement of them? That's really hard for me because I have spent my entire life fighting for life. I don't do this to make a point. I don't develop false moral equivalencies, and I don't take myself out of the equation. You want to know how we do what we got to do? We build power. It's about maximizing impact, and I hate to tell you this again. I have to remind you that if you went out there and you voted, right? Sorry, if you protested, you went out there and you protested, you're not no different than the people who are trying to vote right now. You are trying to appeal to the government to make a change, or you're just like, I am sad about this. I don't want this to happen. This is our, I read this and I'm like, wow, every time that we sit back and we have this thing and we debate and we pretend like things don't, women lose, and right along with them, trans people lose, bisexuals lose, black people lose, Muslim people lose, brown people lose, everybody loses. But fascism understands very well that if you control the population of women in a country, you control the fucking country. Fascists understand that, and yet somehow we seem across the left to hate women so much that we actually don't want to reckon with the fact that we actually have to give a damn about them if we want to enforce and empower some actual change. I believe in us completely. I am frustrated, but like I said, we've lost the plot, not each other, and only a few. I'm seeing shifts happen, but I want to see this debate happen live. I want a platform that actually can push people on this if they're pushable. A lot of people aren't, but you know what? That's just the work of being an activist. You don't need to make people see the light. You just have to be it. So to all my lighthouses out there, I see you. I'm following you. I got you. I am so clear that this fight is a winnable one. I am so clear, but I refuse to engage with the idea that empowering fascism will teach the Democrats a lesson. What the fuck is that? Who thought of that? What a dumb conclusion to draw. Anyway, I'm about as mad about it as a bisexual is because we don't have enough representation. I'm not actually a bisexual, but because it's not about who you sleep with anymore, I don't know what they are. So anyway, with that, why don't we hit the VMs for that voice note of the day?
Hi, Janaya. My name is Stephanie. I'm going to try to keep this as brief as possible because I am also a yapper. My first question is, you've mentioned your twin. I would love to know more about them. Do you have conversations like you do with us, with them? Do they share the same views and beliefs as you? My second question is, what are your favorite Canadian versus American snacks? And then my third question is, I worked as a licensed clinical social worker for a long time in a men's California prison. And saw a lot of abuse and neglect and ethical violations. And I was just wondering how you feel like we can progress the carceral system. How can we change it? How can we focus more on rehabilitation? Anyway, thank you so much. Love this platform. I'm so glad that your voice is out there more. My mom and my partner and my friends listen. And yeah, we really need you. So thank you so much. Have a great day. Bye.
What a great slew of questions. Thank you so much. I will have to answer very succinctly. One, my sister and I have a twin sister. She's like the opposite of me in every way. We're fraternal, so we're the twins that nobody cares about. We're just the fourth runner-up in the race. It's like you were there, but nobody noticed. That's what fraternal twins are in the twins race. But we actually were very estranged for a lot of our childhood because it was very tumultuous. And we haven't lived together since we were, I want to say 11. It was a lot of, in my case, it was, she went from friend to friend to friend, and I was, in foster homes and group homes and that kind of stuff. But, we found our way back to each other, and it is really incredible. I am so impressed by my sister. She has none of the politics that I have. In any way, but that doesn't actually make her the opposite. My sister just has a good heart. I remember when I had a friend and my sister didn't know what their pronoun was, but doesn't, like, I don't enforce, I'm not like, my pronouns are they, like or he, or, my sister can call me whatever the fuck she wants, like truly. And it is such a thing, I love commemorating that part of our life. That, she sees me as her sister still, despite the fact that I look like Jaden Smith. I think it's pretty miraculous. But, my sister didn't know this person's pronoun, and I could see her trying to, figure it out. And so just kept putting herself on mute, where she'd be like, oh, so when is coming? And that was if she had used the person's name over and over again. And that is my sister in a nutshell. She can just pick up on things. And she's so pragmatic to my, idealism. And she's been a real balancing force in my life, and truly is the natural leader out of the three of us. I have a brother, but whatever. Yeah, boys. I'm one of them. My sister ended up with two brothers by accident. But anyway, snacks, look, anything Caribbean, I am so sad for the Caribbean, the state of Caribbean food in LA. It's the absolute fucking worst I've ever had in my life. I've tried 16, 17 different places. One of the snacks that I miss the most is chana. It's like dried chickpeas with some seasoning on it. It's a favorite crunchy Trinidadian snack that, I don't get out here because no one in LA cares about me. I'm joking. Like 3 people do. What else? Oh, look, I've got a lot to say on this. I'm going to try to keep it right and tight. First of all, thank you for your work. Just want to say that. Thank you so much for your work and for sharing some of it. I'll say this, there's so many points to jump in on this conversation, but in the interest of time, and hit us up with another question, later if you have it, but I am keen on where we were before the 1970s. So if you know anything about the prison industrial complex, you know that the 1970s is where the era of mass incarceration really began, and it was a deliberate choice by policy, right? It was inflamed by campaign rhetoric that focused on uptick in crime, and that was a story that people in power told regular people, including legislators, who then demanded all of these stricter sentencings. And so we know this to be true. If you listen to any of our politicians, including the Democrats, you're hearing the exact same rhetoric. So when I am where do we go from here? I look at how prior to the 1970s, rehabilitation was actually the norm. It was the norm, it was the standard, and it was very impactful. It was key. It was a key part of U.S. prison policy before then, where prisoners, and I hate using this word, I'm going to say incarcerated peoples, were encouraged to develop occupational skills, and they helped to resolve psychological problems. And of course, we all know that they were still throwing people in jail. In asylums who were mentally unwell, and that is a huge swath of the prison population today. So reintegration and fighting against recidivism, right, was paramount. And people in power didn't like that. They didn't like that. So they got rid of mandated treatment. They got rid of making something of yourself or having opportunities that you can set up for when you came out of prison. And since then, we haven't gone back. So today, the total U.S. government expenses on public prisons and jails is $80.7 billion, right? $4 billion in private prisons and jails. So my thing is, when we think about what do we do about housing? What do we do about mental health resources? What do we do about the fact that people can't pay their rent? What do we do about the fact that I'm like, all this money, all of these tax dollars are going to prisons. They're going to literally keep people in prison. Each person who's incarcerated costs $30 to $40 million. So for me, I go back to the policies. Then if I'm trying to be realistic and not like, let's abolish prisons now, and I'm all for that. I'm like, fucking get rid of them. I'm looking at what some of those policies were prior to the 70s era of mass incarceration. I'm looking at what Michelle Alexander, sorry. That was me hitting up my friend to be like, who was this? Why is this name? But I got it. Michelle Alexander, I'm looking at some of these policies. I'm looking at, captive genders, and I'm reading all of these works. So these are some of the places that I go. But I think one of the greatest arguments for shifting things is because people lack imagination, is going back and saying, this was actually the standard. I thought you guys were about tradition. Anyway, I could talk about this forever. This is such an important conversation. And it's obviously not a popular moment. I hate that we cycle our interests. Like in 2013, we were like, oh my God, mass incarceration is a thing. And then we're like, okay, we're moving on now. So that is why your work is so integral and so important. And just thank you for getting me to think about this. And I actually want to embed it more in the way that we talk about this show moving forward and the work that we do here, because, sometimes you learn so much, and, my job is to help shape the narratives now, but I get lost in that too. So there's much more to be said. I'm very grateful. Anyway, send me more questions, because 3 in a row is a pretty good hit. Why don't we cue up that music for the end of show? I want to say to y'all, thank you so much for listening to JFK Today. It means the world to me. This show really is a labor of love. New episodes are dropping 4 times a week. We're available everywhere podcasts are. Don't forget to send me a voice note question to jfktodayShow@gmail.com. It can't be me cringing at my voice alone. It has to be all of us together. Shout out to KR, Carolyn, the JFK team, and shout out to you, the listeners that make it all possible. Love you. Peace.